Now, traditionally in the past, when we've done mobile sessions, they've been very generic. They're very high level, and they basically go into not too much detail, but show you all the fancy stuff. So what we wanted to do with this session was actually crack it open a little bit and show you how we get there and how we do some of the stuff that goes along with it as well. But before we get into that, as you can see, we've been building uh, these series over the past 4 months or so, 5 months, and what we wanted to do is throw it open to the audience a little bit to have a think through this session, what they'd like to see for the second half of the year. We've got some ideas there around imagery and BIM and LiDAR and insights and BI tools and things, but just have a think through the session, what you would like to see in future sessions. And then what we'll do is at the end of it, we'll come back and just get your feedback on other areas that you'd like to see in the platform that would actually benefit you over the next 6 months or so as well. So that's something really important to think about, because we're fully flexible here. We slotted in that vector tiles session because after we ran the web services session, it came up, people wanted it, so we slotted that in as an extra session, and obviously all the others have slipped down. I know LiDAR is quite popular and topical at the moment, and in other sessions, people have also said the 3D stuff and the BIM stuff. Not to bias anyone or anything, but certainly have a think about it anyway, and we'll come back and revisit at the end. I guess what we've been talking about over the past sessions is data is derived from our databases or our data stores. This is converted to web services, published into the portal and out to web maps, and then consumed by applications. And so that's the whole premise of the platform, is the ability to bring the information and expose it to the organization. One of the things that we now want to do is show you how to make this smart applications in the field. And that's one of the real core keys here is how do we actually take this data and make it clever, intuitive out in the field for everyone. And traditionally, when we talk about these environments, I'm going to say we generally talk about Explorer, Collector, and Survey 123 as being our primary sort of applications, and most people just focus on the collection tools without much thought about things like Tracker and Explorer. And we're not really going to focus on these two over here so much, apart from the fact that hey, they're a tool set that you can use, and Workforce in itself is probably an entire session anyway. But what is important when we're thinking about mobile is the data that we're actually going to work with. And I always start with the ArcGIS Pro space. Whenever I'm preparing a presentation like I've done today, is I always start in ArcGIS Pro, and I always design what I'm presenting in the ArcGIS Pro. And so things like I was doing something simple with rubbish bins before. Whoops. And let me just go over here, and you'll see this is a very simple map that I've got here. But yeah, cigarette rubbish bins versus non-cigarette rubbish bins, very simple. Doing vegetation clearance, design it inside the web map first, set up all the symbology, set up all the map extensile and all the bookmarks, and then publish them to ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. So that's the way I tend to work. So I always include ArcGIS Pro in one of these presentations. Now, I wanted to highlight here that Esri does have a larger suite of mobile tool sets. We're going to focus on Collector and Explorer and Survey 123 and Quick Capture and a bit of Tracker today. But I want to say up front, there are a couple of versions of Collector and there are a couple of versions of Explorer. If you have open up your mobile phone, and on your mobile phone it says you have Classic Collector or Classic Explorer or Classic Workforce, you need to remove those versions and download the new updated versions of Collector or Explorer or Workforce, because they take advantage of some of the things we're going to see today. So some of the labeling we're going to see, some of the offline tool sets that we're going to see, some of the arcade language that we use in our web maps are available through the new updated runtime engines. So that's something to think about. You do need to upgrade your version of Collector and Explorer to take advantage of some of these things. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look under the hood. What governs this whole mobile space, and how do you make it work, and how do you make it efficient? So we're going to start with ArcGIS Explorer and ArcGIS Collector. Everyone knows Collector, right? And one of the keys, just going back a minute here, let's just go back to the page where I was back here, is this little web map here. It's only a little piece in the portal, but it is the most important piece when you're dealing with the mobile space in Collector, and Explorer is perhaps the most important piece. And the reason why that is that in the web map, you dictate the symbology, you dictate the scaling, you dictate the labeling. How the behavior of those features, that are those web services that are held in that web map, is really, really important. So if I pop up, for example, my mobile device right now, so I'm just going to put on the screen here and bring up my Explorer. So I'll just go in and have a look, and what we'll see, give it a moment, in here is the way this is a map. Come on, this happened before. It was a little bit slow when it started off, but once we got it in there, there we go. So in this map here, where are we? Let's just go to our bookmarks. So the first thing, if I go to my bookmarks in here, I'm going to go to Leasingham sort of Clare, or we'll go into Clare itself. You'll notice those bookmarks are actually coming from the web map itself. If I go and click on an item, so if I go and click on one, you'll see there's the parcel coming up, and I've got some information about that parcel obviously highlighted there. If I go and click on a block clearance item, so you can see this when I start to slide up, it has a different way of representing the attribute information that's associated with that as well. So this is all controlled and governed by our web map. So if I just bring up, let's just pop this over to one side here, my vegetation clearance, there we go, that one there. So this is the web map that I'm working with, right? And over on this, in here in the web map, you'll see I've got my Clare and Watervale. And if I look on this device here, you'll see that that has my bookmarks of Clare and Watervale and Auburn and Saddleworth, Attleworth and Hilltown, etc. So they're basically dictated, I'll just move that off to the side for the moment, by basically these ones here. And if I zoom into that, you start to see it. Now, importantly, if I click on here, you'll notice that that has a customized pop-up. And if I go and look at these items here, you'll notice this has basically a non-customized, but it has a cleaned up pop-up. And I think that's really important when you're talking about it. Pop-ups are really, really the strong and important point that makes this mobile environment really, really usable. And one of the things when we talk about Collector is that if I have a look here, let's go look at the block clearance layer, for instance, at the beginning. So we just go and configure that pop-up. You'll see it has a block clearance as the title. So that's what we see. Let's just go and look at this here and move across one. You'll see block clearance, and there's the object ID, and there's the property address, and that's what we see. And if we go and configure the actual attributes of this, you can see those things are visible, but they're not editable. All right, and that's really important that you configure it in such a way that what you want your field operators to work with is also the way that they perform inside Collector. So Collector you can get the information out here, but you can only edit has block been cleared, notification level, notification method. The other important thing in here as well, if you look at the creation date, you get the format. And this is the representation of the way that that information comes back. And you can see at the moment, there is no, on this table over here, there's nothing there. So if I go in here and go click that, and now go OK and OK, what happens now when I click on the creation date here, you'll see there it is being represented in that way. It's really important that when you're actually designing this, there is other ways to do the pop-up, but these configure attributes here dictate the way it's actually displayed. But also, you'll notice property address, the alias is property address. And if you look here, down here, this one, that's the block, that's the layer name, so block cleared, but the actual question the customer gets presented with has block been cleared. So if I was to say, go and pick up one of these, and if I go and edit this item here, you'll see notification level has this block been cleared, and I get a drop down list in there as well. So there's a couple of drop down lists associated with this. Very, very important. You'll notice if I go into this one, whoops, let's not just go, let's just stop editing that for a minute. When we come and have a look at the DCDB layer and we go to configure the pop-up on this, you'll notice firstly there's nothing in the title, and that's quite deliberate in this instance. You'll notice that I'm using a custom attribute display list in this instance, and I'm going in to configure this. You'll see that that information is actually a series of fields which have been extracted from here. The information about whether it's been occupied and the vegetation clearance, and then I've got a URL that we're going to come back and talk about later. But more so to say at the moment, you can see that there is a URL sitting in here, and we'll talk about how this actually works in a little while. But more to say, that's the information that's coming back. Now, often what people say to me is, oh, look, what I'd really like to understand is how many times someone has done an inspection on a particular property. Something like this one here. I've got a vineyard here in the background. If I click on that vineyard, when I'm clicking on that, I'm getting an inspection count of 10. So let's just click over here. You can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 items on there. And I've got an average. Beaumay is the ripeness of grapes. And there's an average across that vineyard, Beaumay of 12. If I go and have a look, those items are looking at my legend. Vineyard inspections are those. And then there's the block information here. So what I'm doing is this is what's really, really important. Now, if I go to configure the pop-up on this one, you'll see I've got some custom attributes that are being returned. And if I see the count inspection on this one, click on the configuration, what it's doing is taking the block information or the base layer information, and you can see it's doing a count across that. So if I go test on this, what it does for me, it is basically looking between those layers, and you can see that is basically returning a result of a count across those ones. So it looks, and you can see here we've got the intersect component, and this is looking at the inspection layer versus the original original block layer, which is this feature set by name here. So we're able to actually manufacture data on the fly. So to give you an idea, if I go over to another area where there is some other inspections like this one, for example, clicking on that one, you can see that there's a count of 1, Beaumay of 12, because there's only one item on each of those. This one here, going back again, you'll see there's 10 on there with an average of 12. So that really gives you an understanding, and that information that on the fly will actually transpire down to your collector and survey 1, 2, 3. Really important. The next piece then, once you've got that, is that you've got your domains and your subtypes and all that sort of thing and your default values. What can happen, and where I tend to do a lot of this work, is I will do a lot of this work in ArcGIS Pro in my geodatabase. So I will actually build out my domains. I'll set up all my defaults. I will build all the subtypes if there's any of those. I'll set up a lot of these column aliases that you saw. I'll set all those up, and then I'll publish it. And then that transpires through quickly. But if I happen to be in a situation where I get additional content come through or additional items come through that I want to change, you can see here, for example, I'm looking, let's just go back a bit here. So I'm actually looking at a layer here, and you can see I've got the ability let's just go to the content on this one so you can see where I'm going to. So looking at this, and let's just go down to where this sits, which is in this one. You can see I've got a feature layer called vegetation clearance. And if we go and look at the details on this, I can actually get access to the raw data of this particular feature class by looking at the data field here. Okay, and you'll notice here's all the raw data. Then I can go over to the fields, shows me all the fields that are here. And one of the things is I want to be able to look at the clearance here, for example, and you can see that clearance has a domain of yes and no. Go to the notification, you can see the values, and then that's got 3 fields on here. So you can see, and the occupied, yes or no, and then this one, for example, this title has nothing in it as well. So I have built out the domains, and it's all configurable from here. So I can just go edit. and I can start building out those domains or add, and I can just go and type in here, for example, other and other, and that will now actually save, and you can see the counts up here as well. So that is a way of actually editing data or updating domains if you happen to find that you need new information to come through. So that's some of the things to think about when you're actually designing for ArcGIS Collector and Explorer. The next thing people say to me is, oh, you know what? Everything you've been showing us is online. What about offline? How do we work with this offline? And this is in one of the reasons why I said before, you need to have the latest collector or latest explorer, because Explorer never went offline. All right, now it does. There is the latest Explorer does allow you to go offline. There's two important things that work with this as well. So if I coming back to my content here, and if I go into this one, so in this one, you'll notice I have a map that's configured for offline in here. And if we go and have a look at this, and in this map itself, I go into the settings down the end, and I've got offline capabilities. You can see I've got advanced options and managed areas. In the advanced options, it says device will download and get updates, features, and attachments. Just get updates, or won't get anything. Likewise with the read only, get it once and don't worry about it after that. And then how it packages those up. So basically, we'll use a base map. And once we've done that, then we go into our manage areas. And one of the things people know is they know, like where I live in the Adelaide Hills, we know traditionally where the black spots are. And so we can actually define areas where we can go, all right, I'd like to actually go and through this field gardens here, I'd like to go and get an offline area or create a new offline area. I want relatively high detail, so I'm going to say it down to there. I want this to build up a cache every day because I'm collecting data, and we'll do that at 7 p.m. at night. And then also what happened is we can then allow the devices to actually download those at any point in time, and we'll call this field gardens. So what happens now is when I go save, that will actually, you can see here, it's starting to package that up. If I move over now to my mobile device again, so if I just pop that up on the screen, let's just drag that on again. What we'll see is if I now open up Collector, you'll see I've got this offline inspection one here. And you can see the ones that are on the device at this point in time. And there's Field Gardens, the one I just made, and you can see it says it's generating that one for me. If I wanted to download the cricket ground, so you can see the cricket grounds are one here. So if I say click on that, that's where it is there. I wanted to download that package before I go out in the field. I simply do that and it clicks it down to my map. What it means is when I go onto the River Torrens here, for example, it basically, let's go to my bookmarks and we'll go to Adelaide. There we go. See, that's the packaged area for that small one that we see there, right? And that's it there. But I can still get access to all the information. And when I capture something on there as well, so if I, let's go and edit that one, for example, and I'll change the road name to be something else. So if we click on the edit button there, and we'll change the road name, we'll change the tree type to be bay tree, for example, and we'll submit that. What happens now is you see I've got a little blue dot on here now saying that's ready to be uploaded. And then I can say, right, well, then I want to converse that and we'll sync that. And it now sends it up to the this environment here to be worked on. And then what will happen is that'll get recached and made available to everyone in the next scheduled case session that actually happens. So offline is very important. And basically what it allows you to do is works in Collector and works in Explorer, and it's soon to be available in the Workforce application as well. So we saw that. The next thing that I want to show you now is something that's really unique to Explorer. And it's the concept of redlining. So in the Explorer space, what Explorer is traditionally used for, let's just drop that down, Explorer's really about that space where you want to get information. So I click on a piece on the map. tells me about what we're looking at there. I want to be able to see what that particular property is, and away we go from there. But also I might be out there and I'll say, oh, look, at this location up here near Clare, what I've noticed is there's some changes that need to be made. So I'm going to go and mark up. I'm going to go and put there's something on this property that's a circle, and there's a piece over here. So there's a square on that side. And what we'll do is we're going to put a straight line off the side here and with an arrow. So we'll go like this. There we go. And what we can do is add a bit of color to this as well. So we'll just go, yep. And now we'll just change that one. And then finally we'll put an arrow on that one as well. So you can see you're starting to get some redlining in there. And from that point there, now I've got some red line, and that's quite important piece of information that I need to get back to my office. Now, because I'm an explorer, generally it's just for information where I need to go. I click done on this. So I've saved that bit of red line. What I like to do now is that markup, I'd like to send that back to the office. So what I can do is click on this button down here, and there's a share markup piece. And what it does for me, there we go, whoops. So if we go up here, and I can go share to ArcGIS Online, and you can see this is going to put markup 11th to June, and we'll say, let's save that up there and just get rid of that. So that's saved it to my ArcGIS Online account. If I come back now to, let's just minimize that down and go to all my content. There it is. So here's the piece of markup that I've just been working with. And if I open that in a map viewer, what will happen now is you'll see it's visible. It's come off of my Explorer, and there it is. Whoops, it's up here. It's up to the top of the page. But there's that piece of red line that I've captured there. Now, that's fine. It's in a web map. And you go, yep, that looks pretty good. It's in a web map. But what I really need to do is edit some more authoritative pieces. So it might be someone back in the office who's in ArcGIS Pro, and what they need to do is actually go in and edit the map for me. So in my ArcGIS Pro space, I'm here. Here's my project. Here's my portal. You'll notice I'm connected to the same portal. I'm just going to refresh that now. And when I refresh the items there, you'll see that there is that marker, capture 1153. And I can add that to the current map. That'll read that in. And it's put it in there. And then I can simply go to zoom to that. Where is it? Zoom to layer. And I must have had multiple markups in there, but I think that was in around, where was that in around? Looks like it's in around Clare or something. Up around the top here. Let's turn off this layer a minute. There it is. So you can see there's the markup now in my ArcGIS Pro space. And what it will enable me to do now is I can then start to work with that and have that work and work with that in the mobile space and edit my authoritative data sets. Well, it's quite important because you can now start to bring that information across as well. They're the sorts of things that Explorer does allow us to do. So without editing my direct data, it does give us that downstream markup level of capability. But then one of the other things that you want to do with your Explorer is you want to be able to then have navigation. So whether you're in whether you're in Collector or Explorer, you want to be able to see where exactly how to navigate to somewhere. So if I just bring that back up again, and I might want to go in and say, okay, that particular location, let's just get done on that. And let's pick that property there. I want to navigate to that property. I can pick it out and it says, let's get the directions to that property. By doing that, it actually looks on my device and goes, okay, you've got Apple Maps, you've got Google Maps, you've got Waze, you've got ArcGIS Navigator. What do you want to use to navigate? Well, I'm going to use my Navigator tool, and that's going to take it from my place now, which is there, and it's going to provide me with a direct route to that. Conversely, I can maybe, if I don't have a license for Navigator, I can then say maybe I want to go and use my Google Maps, which most of us seems to have these days. And that will also do a route for us as well. Shows me a couple of different ways to get there, depending on traffic, etc. The other thing that you'll notice on here as well is I may want to understand how to get somewhere, so I can get the compass bearing. And as I move my phone around, you'll see that will actually, depending on the direction of the phone, that'll also rotate and update as well to that particular property from my place. So just some things there that you may well be. Let me just go back in that, and may well be of interest for you at least anyway. So there's some components in there that you can work with. So now let's just go to the next one. One of the things that we do in this space is we basically allow our apps to integrate with each other. And what I mean by that is that we can set up these to talk together. We can go and get information about how they all work together. And one of these ways has been through Tracker. Now, some of you out there may have been using Collector for a while, so you'll remember the old Collector, which had its own inbuilt tracking capability. The disadvantage with that inbuilt tracking capability was the tracker Collector had to be in the foreground, and you couldn't leave it on because it would use a lot of battery power. Well, in this instance, what we have here now is if I go and bring up my screen again, you'll see on here, I actually have a tracker application running. And you can see that that's where I'm located at the moment. And yesterday, I haven't left the house today, but yesterday I went over to the footy field and with my son, and we had footy practice, and you can see exactly where we've been. It's a low-powered application, and it basically runs in the background. I keep forgetting I've got it on in actual fact, and so the guys at work are seeing a lot of things of where I've been over the past whilst we've been at home. But the important thing here, what it means is when I'm in, say, Collector, for example, and let's just go and pick up a different project now. Let's go and, say, pick up that asset inspection one there. What it allows me to do is in here, you'll notice I have my tracks. And if I turn on my tracks, it goes and talks to Collector, and goes and talks to Tracker and pulls back the current interval that you've got shown on that device. So I've got my last 72 hours, so it's showing me there the last 72 hours, as well as the existing layers that I've got working within this map as well. The same holds true for our Explorer as well. Same thing in here. You can see I can turn on my tracks, and then going back to where I am right now, you can see there's the tracks there. So those apps talk and integrate with that. Now, Tracker works on ArcGIS Align, and it also works with ArcGIS Enterprise. And yesterday, this white paper was released that talks about how you actually deploy Tracker. This is really good because it goes through all the detail in the back end, things you need to consider, some of the conditioning that goes along with it as well, what the data formats are. It's about a 15-page document, but it's really worth it because I sat down last night and had a read of it, and it showed me and pointed me into some key areas with my enterprise platform, at least, to make this an optimal tool set to actually work with. So there's a really good way to make that work. Now, I'm just going to now start talking about a different form of integration. So let's just skip over that one. And we're going to talk about the app URL level integration. What does that mean? Well, let's just go on back to my map that I'm over here on this one. And we'll bring up this vegetation clearance for this one here. So you'll remember I had that URL, and I'm going to go and pick a blank property, an empty property there, and I have this block clearance. And what I want to do is I've got information about it. I want to report that that property hasn't been cleared for bushfire mitigation, and it needs a notice sent out to it. So I go and click on that report there, and what happens is it says I need to fire survey 123, and you can see there's this URL string starting to appear here. And if I go from this web map, it will fire survey 123 on my machine. And what it will do is it's pre-populating some of these fields for me. If I go and say, oh, let's not worry about that and close and lose those changes and have a look at this survey 123 form and say collector without doing that, you'll notice it has no property address and original clearances. What's happening here is when I go and pick on one of these properties, so let's pick another red one over here, for example, I pick that up, it picks up the property information, and it picks up the clearance status on that property as well, whether it's been cleared for bushfires, and passes it in. Let's just discard the previous one. And you see straight away it's brought in that is Curb Street in Saddleworth, lot da, 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 and the clearance status is no. So that is firing up on my desktop here. But what if I'm out in the field? Well, because remember going back when I was talking about the web map design, this also runs true for my collectors on my Explorer and my collector on my mobile device. So here again is my mobile phone. Let's just go and look at the bookmarks, and we'll go into, say, Auburn, for example. Looking at Auburn, we'll look for a uncleared property, which could be down here somewhere. There we go. We'll go and grab one of those on there, and we'll say click on the block clearance report. Fires up survey 123, puts the information in. I fill out this and say, has the block been cleared? No. And it's a level 2 notification. We're going to send the guy an email. And by the way, just to show you that my block has definitely not been cleared today. Pretty grassy out there. And you can see that's where I am, and then I can sign off on that. Once I've done that, that will then submit that and put it into the system for me. And the important thing there is if I come back to my diagram in here, I'm actually doing that level of integration. Let's just minimize that down a tick, where I'm going from basically the collector application through. So I'm basically doing what we call this in-app integration, and that's really a quite powerful piece within there. So let's have a look at how this is actually behaving and how this is working. So to undo that one that we're looking at, the URL link is made up of a number of pieces. This ArcGIS Survey 123. Now, there is ArcGIS Collector, there is ArcGIS Quick Capture, there is Navigator. So you can do multiples of these. You'll notice the next thing it says is the item ID. So this number here, or this piece through here, is that, we'll come back, is the form ID for the Survey 123. Then what I want to do is I want to populate the property address with, and you'll see I've got concatenations here of fields that appear in my property. And I want to bring in through the lot number, the house number, the street name, the suburb type, and there. And then also I want to pass through the original clearance status. So I can say, well, has it been originally cleared? No, it wasn't. And now I'm going to update that particular field. And when I do that, that all gets pre-populated into that form. This is quite powerful because I'm only passing 2 fields in here, but there might be a whole series of fields like owner name, postal address versus property address versus like 100 they're in, the suburb they're in, all that kind of information can come through from the property and pre-populate most of that form for you. And then the inspector just has to say, this property hasn't been cleared. We need to send out a level 2 notice. And then is this the second or third time we've actually inspected this property? So you're pre-populating most of that information. Now, when I look back at that particular form as well, so let's just go back to this one. This, whoops, just close that one down, close and this particular form that we're working with at this point in time, if I go collect, it is a single page form. You notice I scroll up the page, right? It's very simple. And it's really, I guess it's what I like to call one of the simplest forms because it just basically, you scroll up the page, there's not much information to collect there. But when we go out in the field, often we'll have a A4 clipboard and we'll have multi-pages. So I might have a bunch of detail about, first of all, the property I'm going to inspect, a bunch of detail. In this case, I'm looking at erosion form, so it's an erosion characteristics, and then a bunch of detail like a mud map I want to draw, or a location or something like that. As an example, if I come and have a look on back on here, close this survey. If I go and have a look here, I've got this pipe inspection survey down here, and we'll, oops, I shouldn't have done that. Click the wrong one. I'll get the latest version of that survey, and we'll go and collect on that. You'll notice that this has 4 forms associated with it. And as I go, and they're quite detailed, each form has a detailed information at the top. If I select on this, it gives me a weighted, you can see I've got a numeric keypad for this one. I've got, if I come over here, you can start to see that if I've got hidden fields, I'm able to collect multiples. I've got a comment on there as well that really gives me some information about the form. And then also I can go and, is the pipe buried? And you can see, you can start to get some pretty detailed information in there. Go through the form, and then I can also set up things like I can do a site sketch, mud map of what's out there. And you can do that kind of level of mud map on there. And then finally, what we always like to do on this is sign off. So someone has to sign off on this particular one, and we say send. Oh, forgot to put the material. There's a required field, and this is plastic. Now, normally this is one of those forms which gets called from Survey One, from Explorer, and a lot of these sorts of fields would actually be pre-populated by the information that gets passed across. And now when I've done that, go through the form, and the last thing I do is submit that form. Oh, look, there's more information. So that's really, you really get a feel there for what I want to do. How do we do that? I guess that's what I was really getting to. How do we do that kind of thing? Well, we using Survey 123 Connect for ArcGIS. This is an installable application for Windows. And if I go and have a look at this pipe defect inspection form that we have here, here's the template for it. But importantly, when I go into my XLS form, my spreadsheet, there's 2 important settings we make. We go into the settings tab, and you can see that I've got a style of pages. Once I do that, then on my survey, I have a group, and that group has an appearance of type field list. You'll see the next begin group has an appearance of type field list. And likewise, all the way down, each group has the type field list, and that gives me the multiple pages that we see back here. So that's the key with that, is you basically need to set up this, this pages style. But then we often have this situation. We find I'm going out with an iPad, and I've got lots of real estate, and I want to be able to populate or push everything into that real estate. And I'll say this up front, is getting it to look something like this. Yeah, it's going to take you a little bit of work, I reckon. You'll notice that this is my first attempt at doing this, but there's a couple of things here we can actually get to with this. So if we go in, the important thing, it is back in that form, we set up a style of theme grid. And then what we do for each group, you can see I want this particular group here to be 3 columns wide. I want this item here, property address, to be 3 across. So let's just go and have a look and at that particular one. So this is the grid one here. You can see this is what it looks like. Go and bring up my form my spreadsheet that goes with this. And you'll see in the appearance, I've said that the group is 3 wide. I've basically got down here that we'll look at this one. The property address is 3 across. That's what I'm seeing. 1, 2, 3 for the property address. This one here, the location map is 3 across, and you can see that down the bottom there. And then if I slide this up a little bit, you'll see I've got the declaration and the sign off down there. They are basically down here. You can see I've got a note that's 1 wide, and then the signature fills the last 2 columns. So that's quite important because that gives us that grid appearance. In order to be able to do that, we simply set the theme on grid, and we set the W thing there as well. We can also combine that multi-page that we saw before with the grid pages as well. So we can join them together so we can have multiple grid pages if you like. Whilst we're on this form, I just want to show you something else as well. So if I just pop up this, you'll notice I've got pictures up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pop up my iPad now on the screen, and we'll just see a form here. This is going to be quite that same form. So this is now bringing up the iPad that I have, and you're going to see what the passcode is. No, good. Right, and if I go and start survey 123, I'll pick out the grid clearance here. We'll go and collect on that one. When I go and grab the photo, so I'll just go and grab this again, like I did before. Now, if I look at this photo, you'll notice down the bottom here, I've got some watermarks. So you can see boardroom sessions, and I've got the inspection date. That's really important for when you actually want to be able to, say this is, no, look, we can see the person was out there in the field and they captured that information. So how do we do that? So what it is in this particular form, let's look at this. Against the image here, this one here, we can see down the end here, there is an Esri parameters field, and that Esri parameters has some watermark information. And so you can see boardroom sessions is in the bottom right, and then if you look in the bottom left there, whoops, there you can see I've then got the inspection date as well. So that information is applied against that image layer that's in that form. So there's some important considerations for doing that as well. So let's just pop this one open now, and I'm going to move on a little bit. So the next thing people often say to me also is they want to be able to do calculations in Survey 123. So they want to be able to design up their forms and have things automatically come through. So what it means is, say, for example, this is a form here. So you've got some mathematical calculations, some dates, and multiple choice. The first thing we'll say is we'll go, the name of this one is Boardroom Session 3. Well, caps lock's on, lovely. But when we do that and I hit enter on that, you'll notice now that populates those, all right? If I go and look at the last one down here, I'm going to say, oh, look, I want to put a number of 2 in here. You'll notice all these ones down here get calculated for me. If I say number of 1, you'll notice all those are getting pre-calculated. And this is form calculations going on there. Likewise with this one, if I put in a date and I say, oh, look, 2020, we go right back to say 2008, for example, and we'll use that date. You'll see with that, that's now calculating. This is actually providing me 2 weeks after that particular date, and it's telling you how old you are here as well. So there's some calculations going on there. And then lastly, there's like multiple choice in here, and as I pick things, you'll notice the number of items is actually being counted up automatically for me. So this is actually being done in the which form have I got open? I've got the wrong form open here. Yes, no, that's the right one. So if we pick that one there, that's this form here. You can see I've got things like the square root occurring, the exponential of 10, decimals, all those sorts of information being done there on the fly. But importantly, the headings, you can see this name here was what I entered in, and this heading here is picking that up. And so you see the color, and there you can see the field information as well. So that's being passed in to give us that color representation. Now, I don't expect you to remember all this. And the important reason why I say that is because when you go new survey, there are these samples here. All right. And these samples give you exactly a lot of the information that we've seen so far with Survey 123. So there's calculations, there's cascading sheets, there's constraints, date and time calculations. There's lots and lots of different styles, setting up those grid style groups and image maps. They're all there. I think if you want to get an idea, go and look at these before you actually start to make those out, because it really helps you with that design. Now, so there we spoke about the watermarks in there. So once you've got all that information, you want to be able to analyze this data. So one of the things with the Survey 123 is there is actually the survey123.arcgis.com. So all surveys that you have, when you lodge them, they get logged against here. If I go and have a look at this particular one here, all of these actually have a data component with it, and we can see information about, well, sorry, let's just go about analyze first. We can actually analyze all the data that's being returned. So we can see here, for example, in this instance, I've got, say, damage severity. We can see information about, say, date of assessment, and we can, that one, we can turn that on and we can say, oh, well, I'd see that by pie chart or a bar chart or a column chart. So you can see exactly how that's being represented. Time of assessment, you can see the frequencies on that. And as we go down, you can see it basically gives you a statistical analysis of the data that you're capturing. So you can see it in representative ways that make sense. And you can obviously, you can print all this information out. So there's one part, being able to look at that. But the next part I hear a lot of people saying is, oh, I need to be able to produce reports, being able to get things out from there. And you can see here, this is a, whoops, go back one. This is essentially a PDF report that gets generated from the Survey 123 page. So if I go into the data in here, it's something that's hidden a little bit. It's been there for about 8 months now or so. And if I go into this feature report, what I'm able to do is I'll select a couple of the items there. You can see they're highlighted, one here and one here. I'd like to produce a report against those two, and I'll click on this preview sample report. What it's going to do is basically produce a report that looks something a bit like this, with a couple of zoom maps, some information about what's being captured. So you can see poles, transformers, who captured it, when it was captured, all that sort of information. And this is a report that you can then push out to anyone in your organization. And the important thing with this is it's just a Word document that you can work with. So I'll bring, as soon as this finishes, we'll bring that up and we'll show you the type. So it's converting into a PDF at the moment. And then we can preview that report. And we'll just bring that up. Yep. And then that will load it down. And once it's got it down, we can actually have a look at this. So here it comes. There we go. And you'll see now there's that one, the first one that I had, and there's the second one that I picked up as well. So you can see the different locations and the information at each of those sites. And if I'd signed off on it, you would see a signature underneath that as well. To do this, you can see I've got the manage templates, and I can see, let's download this template here. So we'll just bring that one down, and it's just a Word document. You can see that there as well. And one of the important things with this is, did that come down? There we go, do it again. There it goes. Down will allow. There we go. And we'll get this to come. There we go. And we'll bring this one down as the template. We'll save that. And when we pop this, just cancel on that, we'll pop this document open. You'll actually see in this, it's in a Word format, which is really nice. And I have formatted this one up a little bit, but you can see in here, I've got things like the shape field with the map settings, the map that I wanted to see, the size, the scale and the size of that, which is important, the number of transformers, those sorts of things, and the signature block and how big I want that to appear. And so that's a report that I then, once I've edited that up in the way I want it, then all I simply do is come up here and upload a new template. And you can see in here, this actually gives me a lot of the controls as well. So if I look at the information in here, it will say there's a sample template in here as well. But I can then start to work with a lot of these in here just by specifying and designing this up. So any feature service that appears in Survey 123, you can then push out by report. The last thing I want to show you with this now is a bit about webhooks. And webhooks are basically what it allows us to do is if I bring in, I've integrated here, but if I bring in a transformer that's been marked as down, this thing called the webhook here, this listens to that particular web service. And in this case, it's saying, if I deliver a transformer that's damaged, what I want to do is then send an email to this particular person from these two accounts. And from there, that will basically produce a report for me. And that's one of the good things about webhooks, is that it listens, and we can do an integration with all sorts of things. And so Survey 123, Quick Capture, and also your enterprise platform allows for an integration piece that in that space. So let's move on a little bit more now and talk about one final product, which is Quick Capture. Quick Capture is a fairly new product. It basically is what I like to call opportunistic. So you'll be working away and you'll find something that is basically happened and you want to report on it. So in this instance here, here's a sample here of Quick Capture. And so what I might want to do is I'm walking down the street and I'm capturing litter bins, and I want to mark up their location. So I'm saying I've got one that's butt out, and then there's not one, and you can see it's capturing them up here in the corner, and we want to see where those are. And you can see as I'm walking down the street, it's capturing those for me, each of those items. I can then in here also, if I go in full screen, I can then say make it side by side, and you can see in this instance I might be wanting to capture, say, the timber pole, and I might want to add a photo to that. Whoops, my camera's closed on this particular one, but I might want to capture a pole, and we say skip that, and the height of that pole is 45. Done, and then it'll drop it on the map for me. You'll notice also if I pick on this one or this one, these actually are just Quick Capture items, and they're basically showing me, and as they get captured on the map, then they start to appear as if part of that web map that I've got loaded in the back end. Quick Capture is really easy because it requires just a couple of things. So if we come and this is the Quick Capture, you could type in quickcapture.arcgis.com, and you can see here, for example, if I go and look at this iPad one that we were looking at a moment ago, it needs a feature form, but you can see, let's just shrink that off. I've got groups, and you can see information about the groups. I can then go and pick the button, and you can see what data it goes from, and you can see information about the particular field that it wants to work with. But you can see down here, I can choose to populate all these different fields from that feature service. But also importantly, when I come into this, you'll see that I can also use things off the device like time and user and accuracy and anything associated with that device. And as you saw there, I can do points, lines, and polygons. So I can just go along, click, click, click. But it enables me to capture multiple things out in the field with limited, input from myself as being a user. Obviously, we can integrate this with high-resolution GPS devices, which will give us super good accuracy. It has offline capability as well. And some of the things they're thinking about at the moment is also integrating it with drones, so people can actually fly their drone and take photos of the of assets, elevated assets, and provide real-time feedback of exact positioning where it is, and visualize it back in your environment as well. So that's a quick whirlwind tour of some of the back end stuff that I do when I'm working with the ArcGIS Enterprise and the ArcGIS Mobile Tool Suite. I guess from that, is there any questions or anyone got anything they'd like to comment or anything like that? No? Okay. All right, so let's just have a quick recap then. So one of the things I started off with was this, where we're saying, talking about the next sessions. Did you find that informative, by the way? Did you find that useful for some of the things you might do? Yeah, lot to take in. All right. Well, is there like any of the sessions here? We've got sort of imagery and LiDAR as a possibility for future sessions. BIM, insights, BI tools. Other people have said things like they want to see some site scan, which is the new Esri drones tools and drones collections tools. Is there anything else that, or any of these ideas that people have preference for in the future? Because what you say is, or what you ask for is basically the way we can organize it in the future as well. BIM, definitely someone said BIM there. Trevor's,
yeah, other BI tools would be good.
yeah, so like Power BI, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, what we'll do is this has been recorded, this session, so we'll send this PowerPoint out to you, and also the recording. You'll get that after the session. You can go back and look at any of this, and if you've got any questions about what we've seen today, if you want to say, oh look, I would like to see this on this type of session in the future, just drop me an email. You've all got my email address, and I can then fulfill that requirement, and we can see how we can make that requirement work for you. Okay. All right. Hopefully it's good for you, and hopefully you got enough information out of it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for that.
All right. Talk to you later.